Hello, beautiful friends. I'm Sherilyn, Happy Stylists, and we're continuing our Fashion Meets Fantasy Football segment. And I have my husband, who is a fantasy football guru. For those of you who have not tuned in, you need to watch last week's show because you're going to learn some amazing tips with the fantasy football. And get your husbands, get your boyfriends, get your significant others, because if they want to learn or they already know it all, tell them, "Oh no, you don't. Come listen to the fantasy football expert." Yes, yes. Oh, excuse me.
Let me squeeze my head, head back.
Wait.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I
you
did.
say that.
So go get your significant others, your boyfriends, or your husbands and say, you got to watch the Happy Stylists, and they're going to tell you, no, I don't want to watch your fashion makeup show. It's not. It's about fantasy football. And I brought my husband, Chris, who is a fantasy football expert.
Yeah,
yes, you are. And they might learn something, and they may say, hey, I already knew that. But I think they're going to learn something. So go get them right now. Anyway, welcome to the show.
A lot of fantasy football is catching some breaks and luck, so it's not all expertise. So I have a lot of football knowledge, but sometimes I don't catch.
There's chances.
Breaks, so.
There's things that happen that are beyond your control.
Yeah, you've got to catch some breaks, so that's just the way it goes. But yeah, I've been doing it for a while.
Long time.
And,
how many years?
I guess 7 years of pretty consistent.
You were kind of on the bus early, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was in a contest online and almost won $1 million. I came in third on a $1 million contest. Didn't quite.
And you may be writing a book.
The
well, you are
$1
starting a book. You have a book started for fantasy football people that want tips and to learn the
game.
game.
Yeah, I've thought of it. But there's a lot of material out there, so it's not.
We'll just watch our show and you'll learn that way. How about that? Yeah, it's more exciting to watch us in live person.
And to make a point, now there's so much information on the internet and YouTube and everywhere else that you can find or have other people help you with your decisions. You don't have to know a lot about fantasy football. And my wife plays, for fun. She doesn't.
I don't know a whole lot.
Necessarily put in the work that I do into it, but she has a lot of fun with it, and that's the main thing. It's just have fun.
Ask people that are at your work that know stuff that you don't know. Well, ask your husband that. So of course he doesn't tell me when I'm actually playing him. Then he doesn't give me the 411. He'll be like, "Wait a minute, you're asking me questions. Do I play you this week?"
And she has beaten me. So $1 million question would be what goes on in the household when your wife beats you at something?
It's not a good day.
No, I handle it pretty good. I just sulk for a couple days.
And then you say, I tell you everything you know, which is true. He's taught me a lot. I don't know how much I've absorbed. That's why I say, ladies, join the ride, because you'll be in good company with me, who doesn't know a whole lot. And if I've done well sometimes, then it means that you can too. So, and I think it's been good for our marriage, right?
Absolutely.
Takes us closer. And this year I told him I would watch more with him. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I could handle losing to her if she knew a few things about football. But really rough on me when she beats me and doesn't really know.
I'm like,
but she has
what's his name? What team does he play? I don't know.
She has a couple of helplines
down at the office
that give her the insides.
C3,
fantasy football gurus
Dustin,
down there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Matthew.
In fact, I don't think we mentioned Nick Chubb in the last video that she picked up. I mean, you can tell I'm emotionally scarred from this episode of fantasy football. But she was told, "Go get this guy out of the waiver pool."
Yep. And he was there. I didn't know you put him there. I didn't. I
don't think she would have discovered him if she had.
No, if C3 hadn't have told me, I wouldn't have. That's right. Okay, so the next topic for this second show on Fantasy Meets Fashion Meets Fantasy Football is give us some tips, Chris, on how you set up your weekly lineups. How do you figure them out?
Okay, well, you're a little bit limited because your only choices are your bench players and who started the prior week,
and who's on bye, right? Sometimes
who's on. You got to consider that, but it's mainly matchups and. Of course, whatever league you're in, they give you a projected score based on the matchup, but I found that that's not always accurate, so I do my own sort of research on for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a wide receiver you're going to start. If you're in the ESPN league, for example, I've played in Yahoo and NBC Sports League, all the leagues, but they're going to give you a projection based on in general terms the pass defense, how good the entire pass defense is, but in all reality, your wide receiver is going up against a cornerback and it's the cornerback that you have to look at as far as how well that corner can cover wide receivers, and that you can find all this stuff. I know it gets a little technical for you ladies out there, but if you really want to get good, yeah, I mean, you go and research a little, the cornerback's efficiency against wide
Like how
receivers.
when you say that, explain. So like it can shut the receiver down, like they're just
Yeah,
on them.
there are certain
like white on
cornerbacks
rice.
that are sort of known around the league that are considered what we call shutdown cornerbacks, and there might be 3 or 4 of those, but you certainly don't want to start your wide receiver against a shutdown type of cornerback. Height can make a difference if you have a tall wide receiver
Can
and
you think
the
of an
cornerback's
example?
shorter. Not off the top of my head, but there's plenty of them up there. But that's why the league is sort of going away from the 5'8", 5'9" cornerbacks, because tall wide receivers, all the quarterback has to do is throw it up high.
And they'll
Wide receiver
intercept.
will out jump the cornerback. But so then I look at what's gonna try to determine what the strategy of the offense would be going against that particular defense. Are they going to run the ball more? Are they going to have to put it up a lot more? For example, if you're going to play a high-powered offense like New Orleans or Kansas City, you're going to have to pass it more than you would normally would. So if you have a wide receiver on a team that's playing against those teams, and especially if they have, of course, the New Orleans defense is going to be better this year, but Kansas City is still trying to put together their defense. So it's going to be a shootout if you play Kansas City. So
Because you don't know what the defense
Right.
is going to do.
Well, their defense is sort of weak, and you know that they're going to put up points, which is going to force your team, if you have a wide receiver going against them, they're going to throw the ball more. So it's all in offensive strategy and who you're going up against. Same with running backs. I sort of look at the middle linebacker of the opposing team, because the middle linebacker is going to be the run stopper. So, for example, Carolina's got Kuechly in the middle. We've got in Dallas Cowboys have good middle linebackers, run stopping linebackers. You don't really want to start your running back against a team that's going to shut that running back down, unless, of course, you have a running back that they pass a lot to out of the backfield. That'll make up for that. But I just go with the best matchups I have and the talent that I have to work with.
Tight ends. There's not a lot of tight ends, is there?
No, you're just going to stick with tight end out. Normally, you don't play matchups on tight ends because you don't have tight ends on your bench. Normally, you've drafted one. I've got a couple of my teams, backup tight ends that are quality, and I might just look at the matchups a little bit. But normally, you're just going to plug and play your tight end, especially if you have a good one. Just going to put him in there every week.
They don't score very high typically, though, right? Like, what's the
Well,
highest tight end score you've ever had in
Kelsey
fantasy?
can put up points. Travis Kelsey out of Kansas City, because he's like a wide receiver. He's a lot of targets, a lot of receptions, scores, touchdowns. You have to look at all that also. Do your wide receivers get in the end zone? Julio Jones, for example, is always rated a top wide receiver, but on that offense, for whatever reason, he's a tall guy too. He's like 6'4", 6'5", whatever. But they don't get it in the end zone to him as much as other receivers like Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham. Other receivers generally have more touchdowns than Julio Jones. So Julio Jones relies a lot on volume. They pass it to him a lot, but he has to have a lot of volume to make up for the lack of touchdown production.
Well, so on tight ends again, you ever put them in a flex?
Yeah, I've put tight ends in a flex, but it's only the time I do that is if I'm running thin on other players and I know the tight end can produce and the matchup's right. But you can use a tight end.
Typically, you put a wide receiver or
typically you're going to put a wide receiver or a running back in the flex position. If you're running that thin, buys can affect how much talent you have in your bench and so forth. But it's just a week by week deal. But setting your lineup every week, the games are on Monday nights, Thursday nights, Sundays, and it's a little bit of and then you have injuries you're dealing with. So that's the other thing throughout the season. You're fluid. You're adjusting your roster based on people that are getting hurt and people that are breaking out in the pool.
And if they're just questionable, you cannot put them on your injured list, right, to make room for somebody else. It has to be an IR.
Well, our league, we have 2 injured reserve slots. Most leagues don't have that. I created that for our leagues so that if a player gets hurt and they may be able to come back later in the season, you can hold them and go get other players in the pool without having to throw them in the pool.
So you need to be paying attention if you're in our leagues or if you're in a
Yes.
league like that, because you don't want them sitting where you could have an extra
Yeah,
position.
the other difference in our league is we have defenses in standard leagues. They don't give, the defense can't score a whole lot of points, so they're not a big priority. In our league, you can win your game that week with a good defense, because our defenses will score, if you have a good defense, plugged in 13 to 20, low 20s on points, which is up there with the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
and
it is.
running backs and wide receivers. Same with kickers. I don't penalize kickers for misses in our leagues. It's just, so you're wanting to get kickers that are long-range kickers like Zerline from, the Rams, or somebody like that. Butker kicks a lot of field goals for Kansas City. So
I have him on one of my teams this year, Harrison.
That's right, Harrison Butker, Greg Zerline, Greg the
I don't know
Leg.
if I have him. I don't think I have him.
I tried to get him the last 2 years, but he goes off the board too.
Pretty fast.
Some of these, it's interesting. The other thing on drafting is you're going to have people in your league that draft crazy. I mean, Pat Mahomes went off the board.
I tried Patrick Mahomes twice, and a guy
First
took
round,
him.
fifth
First
one
round,
off the board.
the number one draft spot.
So you have
He
to
picked
be fluid and be able to scramble and adjust when defenses are flying off the board early, or kickers, or what crazy stuff goes on in your draft. So you're always looking for the opportunity based on some other things that are going on during the draft.
Chris has got a good eye though, because last year he already had Patrick Mahomes before he was anything big.
Yeah,
he had his eye on him.
He was a breakout player, and that was just as a result of some research. And I got lucky because I got in a jam. I looked up, and we're in a 2-quarterback league, so the quarterbacks can go off the board. You have to watch that because they're a premium. And I looked up, and I was just following my draft strategy, and then I realized, okay, I better start getting my quarterbacks. And man, they were just gone. Everybody was taking them. And I remember doing some research on Kansas City and hearing about this Patrick Mahomes guy in preseason, and he was impressive and so forth. So I said, man, I'm going to take a shot on him and draft him. And I drafted Patrick Mahomes last year, and
he did.
Again, I'm a little bit more of a gambler. I'm gambling quite a bit on the bottom part of my draft on players that could really break out. And of course, that pays off. I took Beckham the year he broke out before anybody knew about him, and I had Patrick Mahomes last year. And so that's what gives you the edge. You can't just go by standard draft strategy, or you're just going to be middle of the road. The only way to win it is you're going to have 2 or 3 breakout players that just you have an advantage over your opponent.
Do you have anyone that you can divulge for this year, since you already have them, or do you not want to tell?
Well, I think Mike Williams over with the Chargers, tall guy, number 1 draft pick. He's going into, I think, his might be second or third year, but I project them throwing into the end zone to him a lot. But you never know. I'm not going to give you all my other sleeper picks, but I didn't draft. I'll say this: I didn't draft well in one of our leagues. I had that number 5 slot, which is probably worse than either up front or the tail end of the draft. And I just all the players that I had targeted, somebody grabbed them just before I got to them, and it was just. So I'm going to be scrambling in one of those leagues, my blockbuster team, which has won, I think, 5 out of the last 6 championships.
See, so even when he doesn't do well, he does well.
So well there. But that again, that's where you get back to breaks. You have to have some breaks as well. And
but you got to be paying attention. Yeah. If you don't pay attention to do your homework, or have people at your office that can help you, you miss those opportunities. Yeah, and you got to be watching. You got to be watching for the news, for what happens,
the news,
who's injured and who's going to play.
All that. Plays
who
a role.
Who splits the field? Talk about that. The ones that the coaches like New England that split the playing field with several players. They don't just keep somebody in the hole. There's like 3 players that made it, 3 wide receivers they may put in throughout the game, not just 1 or 2.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Well, some offenses will play 3 or 4 wide receiver sets, they call them, and put in more than the conservative offenses will have the 2 wide receivers, a tight end and maybe a slot receiver in there, but some offenses will play 4 wide receiver sets where they put in lots of wide receivers and 1 running back, or they'll have the running back go out in what they call the flat and then have these 4 wide receivers. But New England's a little harder to pin down on because Belichick, the coach, switches things up almost on a weekly basis as far as his strategy, and so it's just really difficult to work with the New England
'Cause
players,
if
other
you
than
put-
Brady in his prime, and Gronkowski, who's already retired, but hit the tight end. You could sort of depend on them on a week-to-week basis. But
So if you have a wide receiver that they're
and
sharing the
Edelman
playing
now,
field.
Edelman and Wes Welker before him were pretty reliable. But
So, okay, I'm just like, for people who might like myself, you have a player that plays on New England as wide receiver and he splits the playing field. If you stick him in for the game, you may only be out on the field playing part of the game, right? So that's not gonna increase your
Right.
chances for
And
points. You gotta
thing-
know that
one
they're
thing,
sharing
yeah,
time.
You can Google every week target leaders, which are wide receivers that had the most passes thrown at them. Now, that doesn't mean they always catch every target, what they call a target, but it just means they're getting a lot of time and out in the field, and a lot of attention from the quarterback, throwing a lot of passes at the wide receiver. So targets make a difference. You can do some research every week on who the target leaders are, and they'll normally produce offense because they're throwing the ball quite a bit.
So if you're a gal, you can just Google.
Yeah, it's a lot of this is guy stuff, but ask your guy friends. My wife doesn't ask me anymore. She likes to sneak around and beat me
I
without
would
asking
Nick
me.
Chubb if I had asked
So,
you.
but I always have a couple of helplines, ladies, that can help you out with your picks. And what really drives the guys crazy is these. It's great even if you know a lot, feign like you don't know anything, so that when you beat some guy, it just drives him crazy. That you beat him.
I don't know how I won. I don't know.
Act like you don't know who the quarterback is and
Aaron who?
And what are wide receivers?
Patrick
What's a running back?
What's a tight end?
And then beat the pants off some guy and just watch him just be miserable for a week or two. So.
You have anything in closing on this segment?
I had some things, and you had me turned around and spun around on your questions. I've had some things I was going to say. But...
Well, we can share them.
I want to finish something. I talked a little bit about fantasy defenses before. You do have to have, if you're just gonna, I don't just go with the defenses that have a couple of pass rushers. You do have to have a secondary that can sort of prevent passing as well. Pass protection. So. When I said the Broncos, the reason I said they might be a sleeper defense is they shored up their secondary behind the line, their safety and cornerbacks. Chris Harris is back. So anyway, that's just a little tip.
What
Keep an eye
about
on the Broncos?
What about the Cleveland Browns? Because I think
Browns,
people are in question about a lot of things with the Browns, right?
Browns are a good defense. I would rank them sort of just above the maybe 8th or 9th down.
Okay.
Only, and I haven't done a lot of study on the Browns, but I think they need a couple of pass rushers to really make that defense good. But they're good.
They're going to surprise us this year?
They've got a lot of young talent, so it could mature this year. And then the Browns, I think they will be a good defense, but I don't know about a fantasy scoring defense. They need a couple of ball hawks back in the secondary. That's people that can intercept the ball in the secondary in the defensive line. You need to identify a couple of good pass rushers, and then I haven't really studied their schedule out to see how tough their opponents are. But yeah, they should be. I mean, if you're scrambling for a defense and all the defenses are going off the board, Cowboys, there's a sleeper for you. I took them. I'm taking my chances on the Cowboys this year, so we're going to see if they can
produce. That's his team.
That's a home pick
because
I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, but I think I never really. Drafted the Cowboys before, even though I'm a Cowboy fan this year.
Because he wants to
do
things smart.
So we will see how they do.
All right, so we'll finish up the show with that, and I will give you a Fabumazing tip because this is a show about fashion. So, okay, here's my Fabumazing tip.
What's a tip for men?
This could be one. This could be one because you know how sometimes around our eyes it gets a little dry because the skin is thinner and it doesn't have as many
cells. Can I just say,
cells.
I know you're going to sell this little product.
No, I don't have to say.
I'll give you a beauty tip. She comes along with a pair of tweezers and she'll find the gray hair in my eyebrows. And she'll yank it, and I mean the roots of this thing go all the way to the back of my neck. And she'll be yanking that thing out.
Can I have great eyebrow hairs?
And it hurts. But
so
look, I mean, do you
younger.
see? Look at my eyebrows today. I mean, they're just
great. They're not gray.
Really flowing for TV. Okay.
Yeah. So men don't have any crazy old man gray eyebrows.
Yeah, there you
Your
go.
wife will come
So sorry, did I mess up your flow?
Yeah, you did. That's okay. That's what this is about. Okay, fab amazing tip. Remember how I taught you how to repurpose empty containers? Don't throw them away and increase the landfill. Of course, if they're plastic, you can recycle them, but you can also fill things up with them. So I'm going to tell you how to have, if you're a guy or a girl, of course, either one or the other, you can use this.
Put a little of that on me while you're...
Okay. So what this is coconut oil. So you go to the grocery store and buy the cooking coconut oil, which is a solid, but in the right temperature. See, I put some in there. In the right temperature, if it's warm, it's going to be liquid. So in our house, it's probably 78 or 76 degrees. So it is solidified. I don't know what the melting point is, but you can just put some in there, and it's you don't need a lot. And then you can just kind of dab it and see, you want to pat, don't rub, outside in.
Looking pretty good.
And then it'll just moisturize right underneath the eye. Delicate skin, be careful, and then that way you don't feel so dry. But also, I was going to tell the women how to have glowing skin. Just take some and watch this. Well, I kind of put some on earlier. So if you want to be glowing, you can just rub it on your arms, on your neck. Not only does it help with nourishing your skin, it's good for you, very good for you, and it gives you a nice, see how I have a nice glow? That's the coconut oil. And see how you have a nice glow? It's inexpensive.
So I've got a question for you. If you have that little nice glow and you're just shining like that, wouldn't that cause you to sort of bake in the sun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you don't want to go out in suntan. No. Don't go out in the sun.
That's an indoor tip. So
don't get too close to the lights in your house because it might cause a burn from the coconut oil. But you'll have glowing skin.
You don't want to glow at the pool. Right, just inside.
No, you want to definitely, inside glow. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Chris. Appreciate your advice, and we will have another show. Remember, on our program, we learn, laugh, live, laugh lots. We're corny. That's why people hopefully will watch us, because we're corny and off the cuff. Nothing's rehearsed. Learn,
That's right. We
laugh,
didn't rehearse any of this.
Live younger.
Off the cuff, yeah.
And be the best you that you can be. Remember, you're gorgeous, and have a happy day. Thanks for tuning in to Fashion Meets Fantasy Football.